Good morning, Gettysburg, and welcome to the December 4th, 1876 edition of Good Morning Gettysburg. Today is a special tribute to the men who lead our country every day in honor of the end of Reconstruction. But first, let's go to our most popular news segment, News Views. Take it away, Victory.
Thank you, Kaylin. This is Victory DeDuker here for our weekly historical segment, News Views. This week we'll be focusing on presidential expectations throughout the years. After 12 years of fighting the tyranny of the British Crown and overthrowing our first attempt of governance, the Articles of Confederation, the Founding Fathers established the most important document in all of history, the Constitution. The first president of our fine nation didn't even have to run for president. George Washington, an outstanding war general, was unanimously voted in as president. What did the public expect from him? The people wanted the antithesis of King George. Because the U.S. was 90% agrarian at this time, they expected the government, the federal government, to be out of their everyday lives. They did not want another King George. The Constitution did not give the president direct power for a reason. The people wanted the president to be a general, and that's about it. Here's a clip from an interview I did with a Pennsylvanian constituent.
Sir, so you're a constituent of Pennsylvania, is that right? So tell me, are presidential parties important to you?
Of course. I need to know what candidate has my interest in mind.
Thank you.
After Adams, presidents were expected to be a part of a political party. A division between the two parties, Federalists and the Republicans, started during the feud between Jefferson and Hamilton. Hamilton was a supporter of large federal government and a staunch supporter of an elite running the United States, whereas Jefferson wanted a small, local agrarian government. Now we're going to see an interview I did with another local constituent of where does she think the president gets his presidential power.
So tell me, where do you feel presidents get their presidential power?
From us. We are the ones who elected him. We should be the source of the power.
Interesting.
Well, you have it. Historically, his belief is a new one. The expectation of a president whose power comes directly from the Constitution prevailed until 1829, the beginning of the Jacksonian era. Though it's important to note, Jefferson, a staunch supporter of the strict interpretation of presidential powers, approved the Louisiana Purchase, even though the president has no right to pay for land. After Jefferson's maneuver, the president was expected to use his power to gain land in that way. This expectation is especially prevalent during Manifest Destiny. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, the official presidential shift took place during the Jacksonian era. The rise of democracy. There is a belief that the power came directly from the people, not the Constitution. Even so, the people still expected Congress to lead, though the president was seen more open to being led by the people. The last major shift of expectations happened after Kansas-Nebraska Act, an act declaring the new states Kansas and Nebraska, or new territories trying to become states, Kansas and Nebraska, could vote on slavery, even though they were well above the 3630 latitude line. The nation was incredibly divided because of this decision. The North believed that the government was run by rich Southern elites who did not have their interests in mind. Though this belief was hailed as a conspiracy theory, as far as conspiracy theories go, this one is pretty on the mark. The North had double the congressional representation, yet the policies that got center stage in the political arena did not represent their views. The election of Lincoln made the sectional division even worse, Lincoln was elected president with absolutely 0 votes from all 9 of the southern states. Now the South believed that they had no representation in the government. Lincoln was expected to fit the North's feelings of invisibility, but the South expected the president to reinforce their feelings about the slavery issue. Instead, they got Lincoln. Both sides of the nation expected the president to have a dramatic influence on their everyday lives by passing sweeping federal legislation. The expectations are worlds apart from Washington's just 100 years ago. The nation went from minimal presidential expectations to the president being expected to change the lives of everyday people. This is also prevalent after the Civil War, when the president was expected to reconstruct all of the South. An expectation a president has never experienced before.
Thank you, Victory. Next up in this morning's coverage is a segment specifically covering our Commander-in-Chief.
Good morning, Gettysburg. My name is Melanie Marie Moore, and I'm reporting for you today on the Commander-in-Chief, the presidency. It began on a hot September month, and it carries its burdens through still today. The nation was fraught with mistrust for the government after a long, bitter revolution and a worry-ridden bout of confederation. The nation was torn between the need for some semblance of federal government and the need for freedom to reign supreme. Thankfully, they aren't entirely discordant ideas. They are brought to peaking harmony in the presidency. The man who consolidates governmental power and ideology, but is unable to tyrannically abuse a power so sparingly given. It starts with George Washington. His presidency was short and sweet, and being the first in that particular office, he set many precedents. He insisted on the title Mr. President, for example, a title still used today. He initiated the idea of a cabinet of advisors, an idea still used today. And he served only 2 limits, and that is the expected term limit as of now. When President Washington was sitting as the President of the United States of America, he could have sat for as long as he wanted, possibly until he died. That was a very real possibility. But no, he decided that 2 terms was good enough for him. Honestly, President Washington began the exploration of presidential powers, expanding and defining powers that were not clearly delineated in the Constitution. This exploration continued throughout our known history. Another thing that's interesting is manifest destiny. It's a term most commonly associated with our recent hysteria in gaining land for the beautiful and now united States of America. This is a quality that is also seen in the presidents during the 1820s, but it's been around since the beginning of colonial ages. If you look, just our 3rd president managed to grab over half of the land that we now own. Yes, that's manifest destiny. America was designed to keep on expanding. And many of the presidents seem to follow that kind of idea. They derive their power from the Constitution, yes, and characteristically speaking, they generally don't do much more than buy land and put forth federal things, and federal mandates are not something that's common. Honestly, there's a shift there's a shift during the Civil War, and that's what I'm talking about. See, before the Civil War, you had states' rights, and states' rights was super important. After the Civil War, it was more of a federal deal because the federal government won out. The federal government is what won the Civil War, and that's why the federal government was able to determine who was superior. The federal government. And who's at the head of the federal government? Why, the presidency, of course. So, George Washington initiated the exploration of presidential powers. Jefferson expanded presidential powers. Jackson defined the derivative of presidential powers. And many of the presidents after Jackson simply followed in his footsteps. Then you come to Lincoln. He changed the idea of the president. Yes, presidential powers, they shift with the times.
The presidency and its responsibilities have certainly shifted over the past 100 years because, as a very wise and intelligent man once said, nothing happens in a vacuum. So, as we look at the people in power, it is necessary to also look at the circumstances surrounding their power. I find that such dreary topics are, in fact, dreary, and should be bisected and interspersed with beautifully inspirational looks at the same circumstances. Our leading lady, Victory, will zoom in on such a story. Victory
was born a slave in Winchester, Virginia. He was forced to join the Confederate Army and was captured by the Union Army in 1862. He voluntarily joined the United States Colored Troops in 1863 and rose to the rank of corporal. He was discharged in Florida and settled near Alachua County. Walls was elected as Republican and the sole representative from Florida to the 42nd United States Congress in 1871. But the vote was contested by a white Democrat named Block. The U.S. Committee on Elections eventually unseated Walls. And you have not been re-elected since.
No.
Now, 4 years later, his side of the story. Why do you think you lost the election?
We did win the election. I was unseated because they couldn't stand a man like me being a representative.
And why do you think that is?
I'm a man of a few words. We colored people made huge strides during Reconstruction. 1,500 of us held office in those short years. But now...
Do you have hope to go into politics again?
My only hope is, as a proud volunteer of the United States Colored Troops, is for my people to gain the representation in the government we fought for.
Oh my, I am going to need a minute. I can't even. Oh, but Kathleen, weather, please. It's so inspirational. Hi, good morning, Gettysburg. I'll be your weather forecaster for today. My name is Kathleen Richardson. So let's get that weather started. Okay, as you can see from the map, we have a breeze coming in from Canada. That's really interesting because that means in Pennsylvania, right around here, it'll be a little cooler, which you'll see later on. As you can also see, the rainstorm that we just recently experienced is over with. Snow is taking its place. This was wonderful for all you wonderful folks who really hate rain. I love rain, but it covers up the sun, and that's bad. So, anyway, thanks for, oh right, you want to know why the rain was in the middle of December, beginning of December, whatever. Well, let me explain. This is why. As you can see, these are the warmer temperatures. I'm not sure if you can see it on the map that's on the screen, but there's a temperature gauge here. As the colors range to purple, they're getting colder, and as they go to green, they're getting warmer. And so, as you can see on this map, somewhere over by Erie, up there in the top corner, it's really, really warm. And the breeze that's coming in from Canada is making Harrisburg and Allentown a little bit cooler. And I don't remember what the city, but
this one over there is bright orange, and that is in between. It's warmer. It's about 60 degrees in that town that I cannot name, and in Erie, it's about a nice 75. This town, Harrisburg, and Lancaster are somewhere around 30 degrees. So hope you have your winter coats. Thank you. Back to you.
Wow, Kathleen. Very exuberant. Now, it was an extremely eventful election this past November. Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel J. Tilden duked it out in a special congressional committee designed for that purpose. Let's talk to one of our resident experts about this controversial Reconstruction ending election.
Well, Professor Doolittle, thank you for joining us
My
today.
pleasure.
What did elections look like in your day?
Well, back in the good old days, we didn't have any of this special congressional election committee garbage. People won because they had more electoral college votes, or the Senate just decided the election.
Do you think that the parties had a significant impact on the election?
Well, let me explain parties to you. It started out as a feud, basically.
Between Hamilton and Jefferson, yes. Our very own Victory Dan Nucor explained that, yes.
As I was saying, well, Washington specifically told us we shouldn't get caught up in a political party system, and what do? Yeah, we go
Yes, have parties, yes. But about the parties' impact on the presidency.
I mean, the very first parties were the Federalist and Anti-Federalist parties, whose polar opposite views seemed to cripple the country. And then the Whig Party, and then the Democrat-Republicans, and now the Republicans. Anyways, the ever-shifting parties and their constant alignment, Federalist Adams to Democrat-Republican Jefferson, and then along came there was, what was his name? Jackson, yeah, that's right, who started a solid block of Democrats. It was pretty cool. With a couple Whigs here and there, well, until Lincoln, of course. Now, I wonder how long the Republicans will last. Not long, probably. They only had slavery and black rights as their platform.
Okay. Yes, you are correct. But the election, Professor Doolittle, the recent election.
Yes, the Democrats, you're right, held power a long time because of the South, and splitting the ticket with the Northern Democrats, genius. That was the only reason the Republicans won with President Lincoln. Yes, states' rights and local government was the battle cry of the Democrats.
Okay, that'll be all the time that we have.
Yes, and the Democrat-Republicans simply wanted what the Anti-Federalists wanted long before, a strict interpretation of the Constitution and a weaker federal government.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Thank you. Kaylin?
That was incredibly enlightening. I did not realize there was so much history we just had to cover. Thank you, Professor Doolittle. Now, an interesting local event. Reporting on the Gettysburg Gallop, Victory Dan Ducour.
As you guys all know, yesterday was our annual Gettysburg Gallop, where all the kids in Gettysburg have a horse race. Here is yesterday's winner, Robert Duncan. Say hi, Robert.
Hi.
How'd you feel about running the race?
So excited. I even practice 10 times a day.
Congratulations on winning. Live from Gettysburg Gallop.
Unfortunately, it's a bit cold outside this year, but you win some and you lose some. Thank you for such a mainstream report, Victory. But we just don't have any more time. Well, it's been another rousing and captivating morning here at GMG News. Thank you all for joining us, and tune in next time to Good Morning Gettysburg.